Hello everyone and welcome back once again to the conclusion of my mini-series on which builds I like to choose and opt for whilst on ladder in the various matchups in StarCraft 2. So I started with my TvT build where I went for a 3-minute mark, 2 times Reaper and Cyclone build into Cloaked Banshee play, and then the next episode was on my TvZ build, as you would expect this being TvP. And in the TvZ video, I covered the Hellion start into Cloaked Banshee play once again. Bit of a running theme that, so I do like that unit quite a lot for getting good economical damage in and potentially just winning games by itself. And in this video, as you would expect, I will be covering my choice of TvP, Terran versus Protoss build. And it is probably the most common build used at the moment in this particular matchup. Since it's very safe, it's very easy to execute as well, even though quite a lot of people at my current level and below just opt for the very easy 2-1-1 build where you get, 2 Medivacs full of Marines plus Stim in the Protoss matchup as well as the Zerg matchup because, it's one less build to remember and worry about. I do think this one is stronger, and that's why I do like to use it. And yeah, without further ado, let us hop into the actual game. The build I will be opting for, by the way, is the 1-1-1 Widowmine drop into Liberator harass build, which is, as you would expect, not too dissimilar from the 2-1-1 build you might be familiar with in the TvZ matchup, or indeed in the TvP matchup if you use it there as well. So with this build, similar to the 2-1-1 build, you do start off indeed with a Reaper fast expand, as this gives you just a very nice economical start, and typically, I do stress the word typically, not always, but typically, Protoss matchups are generally quite macro-y, quite standard gameplay. Whatever opening they go for, either Gateway or Stargate, it's still going to be fairly a standard game, unless they just start messing oracles. But no one does that in Protoss vs Terran just yet, thankfully. So, as you just saw on screen, I get gas as my first building, and then as soon as I have the minerals, after doing continuous SCV production, as is the case with pretty much every build out there, as SCVs are just so important. So, gas first, and then as soon as you can afford to, your barracks. This gives you the gas necessary to go into, as well as your Reaper, early tech buildings such as factories, starports, both of which, unlike the barracks, do indeed cost gas. So here we are, lots of SCVs being made, let's speed it up, blah 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 blah. And as soon as your SCV at making the barracks has completed the barracks, just queue it up to go down here and make your next command center, as that's the point of the Reaper fast expand. It gives you a Reaper and then a fast expansion. Pretty much at the same time in this game, in this particular replay, I went for it before my command center. You get your orbital on your first base. Honestly, I don't think it matters too much which one you go for first. Just make sure as soon as you got your expansion up, make sure that you've also got your orbital underway. Personally, I quite like it before. That might be optimal, might not be. Who knows? It's probably optimal though, because mules are just so good, and the earlier you get your orbital, the earlier you can start generating energy for mules. So here we are, the Reaper's underway. The Reaper, as you would expect, is there to give you information, as well as some early defense against your Protoss opponent. As you can see, the AI scouted with this tasty, juicy probe. Even though it's a mechanical unit, I'm sure its blood tastes just fine to this, drugs-crazed Reaper guy in the jet suit. So you can chase away your opponent's scout units, you can go into their base, get valuable information on their build. The Reaper, there is a reason why the Reaper is a common starting point for so many builds in Terran. It's just that good at getting information. So there we go, I kill the probe and then also queue it up to go towards the enemy's base. And very importantly, as soon as I had the gas, I also picked up my factory, and at the same time, as soon as you've got your factory down, make sure that you get your second gas on your first base. All the while, of course, continuous SCV production. So, we're nearly getting to the point of the 1-1-1 build. As you would expect, you need one of each basic tech building, basic production building for Terran. That is what it means. So here we go. As soon as your factory finishes, you start making a widow mine, and then you start making a starport. Naturally, if you want to start dropping widow mines into your opponent's mineral lines, you will be needing a Medivac, that ever so powerful bio vehicle, which gives you all the maneuverability for your marines, typically, and your marauders. But in this case, it will be used to ferry around those pesky invisible widow mines. Naturally, I'm not too sure where this build will go once the next big balance patch hits, where widow mines will become visible as they reload their charge, their shot, their explosion. Personally, I think they're cheap enough so that this build will still be perfectly fine. As you will see in this replay, widow mines, even if they get one shot off, do a lot of work with that one shot, and it forces your Protoss opponent to, think about, my forces should be over here, move my probes away, it's wasted mining time, all that good stuff. So, another critical point, once you've got the Starport down and the widow mine down as well, of course, continuous SCV production, etc., etc. I'll try not to hammer on that too much, but your Reaper should be scouting around. Are they expanding, or are they going for one base? If they have not expanded by the time your Reaper's there, start panicking, because either they've got a secret base somewhere, which is very, very rare, but the more likely event and occurrence is the fact that they will be one-basing you. This doesn't happen much at all, to be honest, but if you don't see an expansion there, as I did in just, a second ago, you saw like the blue production orb, that shows that he's building a Nexus there, which shows that he wants to play a fairly standard game up to this point. But if that's not there, then he is interested in just making production buildings in his original base and killing you with them. So yeah, start panicking, start making whatever feels strongest in a defensive standpoint. But here we are, the Reaper doing Reaper stuff, just scouting around. I've literally just got it queued up to go around the outside, and as you can see, I saw 2 gateways, a couple of gases, and the expansion. That's already a lot of information, but if we see, what did I miss? Just the cybernetics core, which is, pretty standard for Protosses to have. So the Reaper can very easily, even though it was quite critically damaged by the Zealot it found at the front here, it can very easily run away, dodge around, and still get valuable information. So, back home, the Reaper having done its job, I'll just go back a little bit, as something fairly important happened back here. So, here we go. So, once you've got your factory underway and your second gas down, before your starport, I should have mentioned this earlier, but you slap down a reactor on your barracks, as given that you're going to be sending out a lot of your fighting units, your 2 widow mines, by the time you've made them, as well as your Medivac, if you don't do this move here, making the reactor, you would be quite defenseless at home, which wouldn't be really that ideal for many obvious reasons, I'm sure. So slapping a reactor down, and then making, 2 times Marines as often as you can while still making SCVs and the rest of the build, that gives you a nice, small, but still fairly powerful fighting force of Marines at home to defend, whilst your widow mines and Medivac go and do damage across the map. It's just a nice contingency plan, and it gets your bioforce established fairly early, and it finds a suitable use for all of those minerals that you otherwise would probably struggle to spend. So yeah, the order is Barracks, Factory, second gas, Reactor, and then Starport with, once the factory's done and you're starting your Starport, widow mines. So let's get back to where we were, more or less. Around here, the Reaper's doing its business. Okay, so the Starport goes down. Naturally, this will only build, at the moment, once it's done, a Medivac. And of course, as soon as your expansion's done, don't forget, orbital it as soon as you can afford to. That orbital will pay for itself many times over. So as soon as the Starport is down, make a Medivac, and have your second widow mine coming out as well. And as you can see, Barracks with Reactor, continuous Marine production. The preference, if you ever find yourself in the dilemma of, do I make an SCV with what little minerals I have, if you've been spending well, or do I make a Marine or 2 times Marines, always go with the SCVs, as in a pinch they can fight, and long term they will just pay for themselves and more, and additional Marines later in the future. So The priority is definitely still for the SCVs, but you also want to get that continuous marine production going. And a little trick here, which is part of the power of this build, is whilst you're still making your Medivac and you're not out on the map with your Widow Mines, you can very easily use them in a defensive standpoint. You can burrow them in your own mineral lines. And the way and the reason why this is so powerful is because of the popularity and, general use of a Stargate opening for Protoss players. As what they do with that opening is that they go into a fast Oracle and then get scouting information, similar to how you would with a Reaper, but in a more powerful sense because it's a more powerful unit. And as you probably know, they can also just tear through your mineral line with said Oracle, as its laser beam thing does a ton of damage. They don't even need to micro it that well, particularly, but having a Widow Mine just sneakily burrowed in your own mineral line gives you the opportunity to just completely ignore whatever they're doing, really. Unless they notice the Widow Mine, which, quite frankly, most people won't, they can very easily just say, okay, Oracle, attack those SCVs, look away, go back home, and then come back and realize that they ran over a mineral line where a Widow Mine was, and their Oracle gets blown up. Because, very fun fact, a Widow Mine explosion on a direct hit with an Oracle kills said Oracle in that one hit. That's pretty good. So, yeah. Part of the power of this build, this 1-1-1 Widow Mine drop build, is that before you drop, you're incredibly safe against Oracle harassment play. Otherwise, you'd need Marines in your mineral lines, which is awkward and can be mismicroed if you're not too confident in your unit micro. So, yeah, defensively, it has a lot of strength up until the point where you go and send those Widow Mines across the map. But by that point, let's look at the barracks now. You will have a bunch of Marines ready to defend. So you can see how well it works. First you've got Widow Mines defending, then you've got Marines. And yeah, it's just fantastic. I love it. So here we go. Starport's making the Medivac. As soon as that is out, and you've got your 2 Widow Mines right there, you pick them up and send them across the map. Lovely jubbly. And then you start a Liberator and just rally it, as you can see here. Just rally it across the map. Let's just see, where did I actually rally that to? I rallied it to roughly the mineral line of the Protoss players' main expansion. So, yeah, as long as you remember that your Liberator is indeed alive and flying across the map, it's fine to just rally it in the same way that you would, as I've suggested in my previous videos, for a Cloaked Banshee. As soon as it's up, it will just fly across the map, and as long as you're, half aware of what you're doing, just remember to take control of it once it's relatively near the base and, optimize its flight path around, stalkers, around cannons, and other nasty obstacles. And that really is the 1-1-1 part of this build. 1 barracks, 1 factory, and 1 starport, which is lovely. And that's really the harassment side of this build over. By this point, you've dropped Widow Mines, and they've probably done some nice damage. As you can see here, dropped, and I'll drop it again down here. So you've done some damage, probably killed a few probes, and then your Liberator is there to tie up and, stress the multitasking of the Protoss opponent. So the question is, what do you do at home? What do you transition with? Well, given that your current barracks only has a reactor on, and Stim as an upgrade for any bio play is critical, absolutely critical, your first priority is just to slap down a second barracks, make a tech lab on it, and then get Stim upgrading as fast as you can. And this also gives your blob of Marines back home, as you can see there. It gives those Marines some Marauders, which are tankier and do additional, armored damage, which is nice. As well as that, you can slap down a engineering bay, which is, pretty sure what I do fairly soon. Yes, you slap down as well as your Stim upgrade. You get a couple of engineering bays, get your upgrades going, get your bio play kind of rolling, and then just add on extra barracks, get eventually, once you can afford to, and you feel safe to, just add on a command center over here, which is what I do at some point. So as you can see, constant production, you've got some tanks. So naturally, you want to add on that tech lab to the factory to get some, you know, just powerful defensive tools at your disposal. And the extra barracks, very nice, allows you to spend your minerals. And here we are. The third command center of this game. So that's really the build. As mentioned, it gives you a ton of defensive power early on, and then a ton of offensive kind of multitasking power just after that, with the Widow Mines first coming in, demanding, at the moment, detection, and then the Liberator coming in, you know, demanding some ranged firepower. And then you just get a very nice defensive force at home. Your initial Marine blob turns into a Marine blob plus stim and tanks into Medivacs, and then you're playing a perfectly standard bio game with 3 bases, and that's super powerful. Your production's down, your upgrades are running, getting an armory for those level 2 upgrades as you want to really pick them up as soon as you can without hindering your production too badly. And yeah, that is the 1-1-1 Widow Mine drop into Liberator harassment build that I like to use in the Terran versus Protoss matchup. So, without further ado, yeah, that is this video. That is the conclusion to this mini-series on what builds I like to opt for in the various matchups in StarCraft 2's 1v1 ranked ladder. I do hope you found this informative and helpful. So, as always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you, possibly, in the next one. Bye!